Fora TV, Idea Immersion. Visit us at www.fora.tv.
We're very fortunate to live in a moment where the economics of the 21st century lie in the server databases of Google and Yahoo and Netflix and Amazon. And if you only look, you can see extraordinary things. And surprisingly few people are looking, and I've been fortunate enough to have their cooperation, and you'll see some of that. But we're just scratching the surface of the really different economics, culture, and lens on our culture, lens on our world around us that we can see out there in these databases. It starts with numbers, and this is the sort of the shape of our age, I believe. It's called a power law. You may know it also as a Pareto. Vilfred Pareto was the Italian economist who observed that 20% of the Italian population had 80% of the land, leading to the 80-20 rule, the notion that a small number of things have a large impact. Low frequency, high amplitude events. Earthquakes are distributed in power laws. A small number of big earthquakes and a large number of small ones. Populations, cities are distributed in power laws. A small number of very big cities and a large number of small ones. The shape is kind of a 1 over x. It's an exponential. It's the simplest possible curve, and yet it turns out to be absolutely ubiquitous in human affairs, economies, and nature itself. If you plot a power law linearly, it looks like that, with a small number of things on the left, high impacts, and a large number of things on the right. It happens to go on forever. I've cut it off. I've truncated it at a random number. If you plot it log-log, which is to say that each axis now goes in factors of 10, you should get a straight line. Sometimes the slope of the line doesn't matter. It depends on the market. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the units you're using, but it should be a straight line. Unless it's not. This is U.S. box office over a 3-year period. The box office gross is on the left, exponential, in a log scale, and the ranking of the films. The number one film, which did several $100 million, all the way down to about 1,500 films. Something happens right, I don't know whether you can see this little line, but something happens right there. And what happens right there is really interesting because it sort of tells you everything you need to know about the distortions of the last century in our economy and culture. What happens right there is not that the films got worse. They didn't switch into foreign languages. They didn't stop making films. What happened is they ran out of screens. The carrying capacity of the American theatrical network, mostly the big screen megaplexes, is about 120 films a year. However, the number of films shown in film festivals is closer to 13,000. The vast majority of films never make it to the megaplex. They never get out there. There are not enough screens to show all the films. And so as a result, you end up with this distortion. You end up with the marketplace apparently falling off the cliff. Not because people didn't want those films, not because they didn't exist, not because the films weren't good, but because of a scarcity effect, a bottleneck in distribution. And so in a sense, everything we think about, to the extent that we thought that Hollywood represented American taste, to the extent that we thought that hits were the sort of, were what our society, collective society wanted, it turns out that in fact hits are what the distribution channel wanted. It only had so much shelf space. And so too for channels of television, for radio channels, for retail shelf space. Every one of these traditional ways of distributing content, where I started my research, has a scarcity effect. And every one of those scarcity effects, every one of those bottlenecks ends up distorting the market and by extension, distorting our culture. In a sense, it looks like this. There is the same power law, and yet it just gets hacked off, truncated. But now we're entering an era where you have distribution methods that don't have scarcity functions, or at least they're pushed much further down. The internet has infinite channels and infinite screens and infinite shelf space. And so what you realize is when you go back to that line, you realize this pink bit right here is the latent market that we were missing before because we couldn't reach those products, because we couldn't connect supply and demand. And that right there is the market we're just now starting to explore, and it turns out to be remarkably large. Here's some actual data from Rhapsody, which is a subscription online music service. It benefits from unlimited shelf space. What you have here in the red part is the albums and songs that are available in Walmart, which is America's largest CD retailer. It has about 4,500 albums in the average Walmart. So these are the hits, and these are the albums that Walmart has and Rhapsody has. Down here in the yellow, these are the niches. These are the albums, tracks, and other songs that Walmart doesn't carry, but Rhapsody does. What's notable about this is that although through some complicated math involving converting albums to tracks, I calculate that the Walmart inventory is about equal to 25,000 tracks. Rhapsody right now carries 1.5 million tracks. iTunes carries about 2 million tracks. The peer-to-peer networks are looking at about 9 million tracks. There's probably 25 million tracks out there somewhere in vinyl, live, remix, all the other songs that are out there and could be and will be brought online. Another way of looking at it is right here. This is Walmart's inventory, and this is Rhapsody's inventory. What we've thought was the music market was a tiny, tiny fraction of the music market. In fact, we're looking at order of magnitude increase in inventory and variety. And so too for DVDs. Blockbusters, the average Blockbuster carries 3,000 DVDs. Netflix is at actually 60,000 right now. Over here at Amazon, the typical Barnes & Noble or Borders carries about 100,000 books. Amazon's now tracking 3.7. There's probably another 6 million books out there. Bring in the networked used book stores, which are now sort of seamlessly integrated into these online marketplaces, and you could be looking at maybe as many as 10 million books in various languages. Extraordinary increase in variety. And what you find is that although we'd assumed, the retail channels had assumed that those niche low sellers were insignificant, sub-economic, just not worth carrying. In fact, when you add them all up, those onesies and twosies are starting to amount to significant markets. In music, they are closing in on half the market, is now stuff not sold in Walmart. At Netflix, about a quarter of the market, a quarter of their rentals are things that aren't available in a Blockbuster. At Amazon, it's also about a quarter of the books now sold on Amazon are books that aren't available on a Barnes & Noble or a Borders. All those numbers are growing. It looks like we're trending to an era where about half the market is sold through traditional retail channels, and the other half of the market is only available through these sort of abundant, unlimited channels, such as with online in particular, but also things like the U.S. Mail, another powerful network, as Netflix revealed.